Hey there, hey everybody! Welcome to this instant reaction from UGASports.com. My name is Rodney DeBulsey. I'm joined by our man Jed May, who is driving back from North Carolina with a car full of barbecue for me, and that's what he does. We send him up there, but he also has a pretty good interview with Jamal Jarrett. But while Jed was out of town, while I was actually driving back from Moreland, Georgia, the news hit that Arch Manning get picked. Texas. So he's going to Texas. A big get for the Longhorns. My understanding was down to Georgia and Texas, and he decided to go to Longhorns. Coach Donnan has always been, we've had him on the show, he's always kind of been like, he's never been as gung-ho about Arch coming to Georgia as a lot of other people have, just because, he's seen these quarterback battles play out. And I said just the other day, I don't think the kid's made a decision. I think he might have made it last night. It'll be interesting to find out when he actually made his decision. But the Texas folks were saying that they really thought he was that his visit went well. Adam Gorney, our national recruiting director, predicted that he was going to Texas. So did Nick Harris. They predicted early in the week that was going to happen. But we were hearing that Georgia was in it. Folks that were over in the building on Sunday said, "Hey, they think he's going to Georgia." So this was a nip and tuck thing, but he's going to Texas. So let me get your initial thoughts there, Jed, while I share this with everybody. Please, everybody, share this with your friends because we want to get as many people on here as possible.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Everybody good? Okay. We've said this on Rumors versus Facts, which is another reason you should watch that show if you don't already, that this whole recruitment up till June 1st has been about schools positioning themselves to get official business with Arch and basically, moving on to the final phase of the recruitment. In Georgia, Texas, and Alabama were the three schools that did that. Alabama got the commitment from Eli Holstein, so it kind of seems like it was a Georgia-Texas battle there. And Arch came the first weekend in June, and like you said, Roddy, all we heard coming out of that weekend was everything went well. They surrounded Arch with a bunch of other top prospects who were in town that weekend, especially on the offensive side of the ball. His good buddy Pierce Spurlin, Georgia commit. I don't know the visitor list for Texas this past weekend. I'm sure Texas also surrounded him with a lot of top talent and things like that. And it's interesting because everyone has been asking, since we talked about this on Monday as well, when's the commitment going to be? Is it going to happen during the season? Is it going to happen before the season? And no one really knows. In a typical Arch Manning low-key fashion, this whole thing breaks with the kid that's got 12,000 Twitter followers and has never tweeted anything, just a simple committed to Texas hook 'em. And that's the only way this recruitment could not necessarily end, but that's the only way this commitment could happen was with something like that. So, Georgia did their best. This is not a slight to Georgia. I mean, the Mannings love Coach Monken, Coach Smart. Buster Faulkner did a great job in this recruitment. It's just ultimately Manning and his family decided to go with the quarterback development of Steve Sarkisian and everything that the program at Texas has to offer.
I mean, you look back at what Alabama has, because Alabama was, I guess, they came in third in this whole thing, and you look at just the guys they have in the NFL. That's impressive. And, he's got his eyes on the NFL. That's where he's, that's the number one thing. Sarkisian can point to those guys and say, look, these are guys that I worked with. These are guys that I've, developed. Here's what I've done. And that was, from what we understood, was the number one draw was, that quarterback coach. Todd Monken took a former walk-on quarterback and won a national title with him. So he could say, look, I can develop quarterbacks too. But it's just that long history. Plus, there's a lot to be said about Texas. And I think it was back and forth. I know that the insiders at UGA said, look, we've heard nothing but great things about him. There is nothing that makes us think that this kid, that Georgia is out of it. A lot of them said, look, I would bet my bottom dollar that he's coming to Georgia. And again, a lot of that comes down to the fact the kid's really polite, and he's probably was saying things like, I can't wait to come back. I can't wait to be here again. I love everything about this school. This is a great place. I can see myself running out, between the hedges. And they all thought that, hey, this kid's coming here. But you never know what it comes down to. My hesitation, I know a lot of people wanted to put in predictions on him coming to Georgia, going to Texas. I'm like, look, I remember about this. I don't know what time of the recruiting cycle it was, but I remember at one point we had a Trevor Lawrence commits to Georgia story ready. It was in our admin, ready to hit push. Because he was leaning that way and we thought it was coming. We never got to the point where we wrote an Arch Manning commits to Georgia story, but we've been, you've been close to it. We're like, do we need a story? Do we not? Because we didn't know when it was coming. So we've come that close to writing it just to have one in the hopper just in case. But there was one point where Trevor was leaning heavily towards George, and then I think it was just one visit to Clemson. He's like, God, it just appeals to him. So that same thing that works for you when a kid comes and visits Georgia, and he's just like, it's just something about this place. It speaks to me. This is where I want to be. That happens elsewhere. So it'll come back to bite you. So.
Yeah, and that's what made this recruitment so hard, because you mentioned all the insiders at Georgia heard him say nothing but good things. That happens at other schools. I mean, with the way the Manning family connections go all across the country, right? And they're not going to go to Alabama or Texas or even the other visits Arch took. They're not going to go anywhere and just bash a place. So, like you said, I'm sure he did say great things about Georgia, and I'm sure he said great things about Alabama on that visit, even though it seemed pretty clear that they were out of the running. So this whole recruitment has been so unique because the kid doesn't really talk. Parents obviously aren't going to talk. His high school coach, Isidore Newman, will speak to the media, but he doesn't really. And this is no knock to him, because I'm sure this is what the Mannings are saying, but he doesn't really give you any super inside information. It's all very generic, coach speaking type stuff. So it's been a really tough recruitment to get a beat on, because every school, the insiders at every school, all feel confident about their chances, because that's what they're hearing from the family.
Let me interrupt you real quick. He also says the same things to the recruits that he's there with. So if you talk to the recruits that were on the trip with him to Georgia, they're like, "Oh, he's coming here. We got him. It's done." Really? He's like, "Oh yeah, he's coming here." Okay. Talk to the kids at Alabama. Like, "Oh yeah, he's coming here." Talk to the guys at Texas. We got him. He's locked up. So, and again, I'm not saying that he's been telling them that. It's just he's a pro. He's young. And here's the thing: we were talking to Brett Bordelin, his left tackle, the 2025 kid, and he's like, I said, "What's the one thing that would surprise people about Arch Manning?" He's like, he's just a regular kid. He's not this superstar. I mean, he's a superstar player. Don't get me wrong. He's just a normal guy. He likes jokes and cuts up. He's normal, and that's what people wouldn't believe. But you can also see that Manning polish. This kid did not give the media any quotes that they could take out of context and write stuff and get a lot of clickbait out of. He didn't give a lot of interviews. He knew to avoid them. He was savvy. I'll put it that way. Maybe not professional, but savvy. And that's why a lot of people weren't sure what was going on with this. But I think when he was talking to the recruits, he didn't tell them, "Hey, I'm coming to Alabama. I'm coming to Georgia. I'm coming to Texas." It was, "Yeah, this is great. I'm loving this." Right. He never said a bad word about him. And sometimes people take that to mean, "Oh, yeah." Whereas we do hear about guys ripping other schools. Guy comes to Georgia, he's like, "I can't wait to kick Auburn's ass."
And I think people too, because the way we're making it, I think some people could take what we're saying as basically that Arch has been, just blowing smoke around. That's not true. Arch loved Georgia. I mean, all the things he said were very genuine. I mean, again, there's a reason Georgia finished second in this race. It just very easily, very, very easily could have gone the other way, and he'd be at Georgia, and we'd be having a very different show right now, with a lot more positive comments flowing in. I'm sure that I can't see because I'm driving, but Georgia did all it could do. I'll say that. They went to go watch him play basketball. Kirby went to go watch him in one of his high school games last fall. They obviously hosted him on the first weekend for official visits. They did everything they could have done, and it's just one of those things. It's like you said, Roddy. Guys will come to Athens, and Athens speaks to them. And it's like Joshua Miller, and obviously Joshua Miller is not, he's not the uber transcendent recruit that Arch Manning is, but he came down to Georgia. He was committed to Penn State, and he said he left Athens and was just like, Athens speaks to me. Athens is where I feel most at home, and all that kind of stuff. That happens other places, and Arch, for whatever reason, and there's nothing bad about the University of Texas. Austin's a great town. It's a great program. Steve Sarkisian's a respected coach. And that's just the program that spoke to Arch. So sometimes you go all in for these recruits, and sometimes you don't win. And there's no, ulterior motives or Texas dropping NIL bags off at his door. And so sometimes a kid just chooses another school. So Georgia did all it could. This wasn't for a lack of trying, for sure.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Georgia. When people would say, "What are you hearing about Arch?" I said, "Look, everything I'm hearing from inside, well, just about everything I'm hearing from inside the program is they love where they sit with Arch. They know they're in the finals there. out of 128 teams, they're just down to them and one other one. Georgia has done everything like that. Like you said, that visit he had was perfect. You couldn't get beyond that. Didn't work. But here's the thing: they're going to stay on it. They're going to keep recruiting him. Now, do you expect him to flip? I personally don't, unless things change. And I'm not saying that he's going to change his mind, wake up tomorrow and go, man, yeah, I'm going back to Georgia. Screw it. He doesn't seem like a Manning thing.
Right.
But what if Texas struggles? What if Ewers, I can never say his name, lights it up? Circumstances can change. It's June 23rd, signing day, 6 months from now. A lot can happen between now and then. So I imagine Georgia's going to stay on him, say, hey, sorry we came in second place, but we're still here. I mean, Kirby Smart has made a living in the transfer portal. And guys go into the transfer portal and guys decommit, even guys who you think would never do so. But it happened. So give your thoughts.
Well, I was just going to say, and another thing, kind of on the flip side of the Quinn Ewers thing, if Texas struggles, I mean, I'm obviously not plugged into Texas. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Steve Sarkisian at the very least gets on the super hot seat with a bad year this year. And when you look at Georgia, something Kirby Smart has pitched to a lot of these recruits, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm about to sign this big contract. They're going to keep me here as a national championship coach as long as I want to be here. So when you can pitch that kind of stability to these guys, again, I personally wouldn't expect Arch to flip just because that just doesn't seem like kind of something we've talked about already, the whole burning bridges thing, and not that would necessarily burn a bridge, but that just doesn't seem like the type of way they would go about things. If they weren't 100% sold on Texas, I don't think they would have committed yet. But yeah, I mean, there's no harm in trying if you're Georgia, right? I mean, the worst that happens is he's like, yeah, thanks for the attention and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to stick with Texas, and then you move on to other 23 targets, transfer portal, and then you really turn your attention to these 24 guys, which 24 has got a hugely talented quarterback class as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to say you don't need him, because you do need him. You absolutely need him, and there's some good comments. Hey, folks, thanks for putting your comments there. We like putting them on the screen. Please be sure to share this. We really appreciate it. And like there was one that was saying, hey, we didn't need him, but it really hurts us recruiting those wide receivers. And I'm like, you needed him. Yeah, you always need an arch man, and you need a guy like that. But it does kind of hurt you with some top wide receivers, because there's some wide receivers in this class that maybe wanted to go with him. So,
well, and you look at Jalen Hale. Jalen Hale is a perfect example. I don't think there are any guys that you can. Just in general, I don't know that there's ever guys that you 100% ride in as like a package deal, right? Unless maybe you have like a twin situation, something like that. Because a lot of guys throughout this process say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go play here with my teammate or whoever. And then it gets down to it like, I don't really like that school that he's going to commit to. But Jalen Hale's a guy. Him and Arch are big buddies. They were on their officials to Georgia together. And they were pitched on the idea, hey, y'all come here. That was the only official those two took together, because the weekend Arch was in Texas. Jalen Hale was at USC. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion Jalen Hale would have followed Arch to Georgia or Texas. But Georgia definitely felt good about Jalen Hale coming out of that visit. Now with Arch at Texas, does that get Texas back into the thick of things? Does that have Texas overtake Georgia? It's one of those things where you don't really know until Jalen Hale commits, but that's a perfect example of a guy that if Arch had committed to Georgia, that probably would have helped Georgia a lot, and now him committing to Texas helps Texas in the Jalen Hale.
And you can get those guys. I mean, Georgia, you've seen all the updates at UGAsports.com about top receivers who are just raving about Georgia. They're raving about the fact that, hey, yeah, they do run the ball, but we saw how many passes they threw. We saw, Lad McConkey catching passes. We saw A.D. Mitchell catching the pass in the championship game. We saw Brock Bowers setting records at UGA. That's it's not just run the ball anymore. So that's popping up. When you talk about burning bridges, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention burning or munching on, if you get a chance, some of stuff from our friends over at the Rogue Apothecary at the Rogue store. The Rogue shop. They have some fantastic gummies. They have some fantastic CBD oils. They got the Delta 9 gummies. They got the Delta 8. They're all legal. Now, if your workplace tests for stuff like this, I would not recommend trying them. But if they don't, yeah, try some of these THC gummies. You'll absolutely love them. And if you have a problem sleeping, like my best friend does, she cannot sleep to save her life. These are the things to fix it. Look, go in and look for sleep aids, or look under pain relief. Hit any of those on their on the Rogue Shop site, the Rogue Shop. Check them out, and it's, trust me, you will be a continuous. Once you try them one time, you will be a continuous patron of that store. Is the word I'm looking for. So, just want to mention them when you get a chance. All right, let's talk about some of the guys. You know, what does Georgia do now? If Arch Manning's off the board, we kind of talked about what happened there. In the 2023 class, I remember you writing about a quarterback that Georgia had gone to him. He's an in-state kid, and said, "Look, we're trying to get Arch Manning, but if we don't get him, we're going to come back and talk to you." And I thought that it was very apropos that Georgia was up front. And, you know, they're not trying to say, "Oh no, we're not in on Arch. Commit to us." They were very forthcoming with the fact that, hey, if we don't get Arch, we have to rework our quarterback board. We're going to talk to you more after that. What was the kid's name and where's he from?
Cason Wiseman out of South Paulding High School, which interestingly enough, speaking of South Paulding High School, there's also a running back there, Jamarian Wilcox, that Georgia's been really in on as, you know, we kind of talked about this on Rumors versus Facts the other night. There's Justice Haynes, 1A on the running back board. Who's that 1B guy? Jamarian Wilcox is a guy Georgia hasn't offered yet, I don't believe, but he's a guy that's been up to Athens a bunch of times this spring. So Cason, he's a guy that has kind of battled injuries a little bit through his high school career, but he's really kind of improved over the past year or so. And it's like you said, yeah, Georgia, when he visited Athens, I want to say in March maybe, for a practice. And like you said, Georgia's up front with him saying, "Hey, we like you. We think you can play." He actually visited Athens for a 7-on-7 last summer, and Todd Munkin was like, "Look, I think you can play. You got to add some weight." He added some weight. He's grown a little bit. He's got some more film. And Georgia told him this spring, like you said, "We're in on Arch. If we don't get Arch, then that's going to change things." So I wouldn't be surprised to see Georgia end up offering Cason Wiseman. I don't know necessarily, you know, like tomorrow or anything, but and then pick up the interest there, because you look at these. I mean, that's another thing that made Arch's recruitment unique, is that most of these 23 quarterbacks, especially the higher regarded ones, are committed already, because quarterbacks often end up as the foundations of these classes to recruit other guys and everything. So, but you look at a guy like Case, I think he's a guy that would be a good. You hate to say take a flyer on a guy because he's a good player, but a guy that you could take in this class, and then you look ahead to the 24 class, and there's so many talented guys. There's Dylan Raiola, who Georgia's really in on, committed to Ohio State, but I'm sure they'll work hard to flip him. There's Julian Sayin out of California. Julian Sayin, I wrote this in the What's Next story. Not only is Georgia one of his, one of the 4 schools standing out to him, Texas was another one of those schools. So you think this kind of flips things for Texas. You don't think he would go to Texas with Arch Manning there. Notre Dame just got C.J. Carr, also in the 24 class. So you take those two out, and Georgia and Michigan are the two, big schools that are left in Julian Sayin's top 4 that haven't got a quarterback in the 24 class. So he's a name to watch. Jaden Davis out of Charlotte is a guy Georgia's been.
Well, hang on, before you get to all those, I actually have your article on the screen. Now, this is a behind the paywall article. I'm putting it here free on the this instant reaction show. You're getting to read stuff that Jed hides behind the paywall because, if he puts it out for free, I cut off a finger, Yakuza style. But I am kind of scrolling through this story as you mentioned some of these guys. So let's wrap up 2023. Basically, they're still going to try to flip Arch. They may look at Kazin. They may look at somebody in the transfer portal. Or there's a name that there might have been a second quarterback that Georgia said the same thing to, where they're like, hey, we're going to look at, we're going to try to get Arch, but if we don't, we're going to come back to you. I just can't remember his name, and I apologize for that. But let's say they don't take a quarterback in 2023 because you've got Brock Vandegrift, redshirt freshman on there, 5-star. You got Gunnar Stockton, 5-star freshman quarterback. You got 2 freshmen. I mean, granted, one's a redshirt in this upcoming class. You're kind of loaded. Of course, you have Carson Beck. I think will be a junior this year or a redshirt sophomore. I can't remember. My point being, you've got quarterbacks. You got plenty. You don't have to take one this year, but you of course you want to go all for broke and get an Arch Manning when you can. So let's say they don't, and they decide to put all their eggs in one basket, or they shift their focus to 2024. So let's start with the first guy on your list, Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, he's a big guy. I mean, he's
6'3", 215.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I actually saw. I don't remember which national analyst it was, but someone had some sort of national story basically asking if he could be the next Patrick Mahomes, just because he has all the physical gifts in the world to be a good college football quarterback. He's big. He's got a cannon for an arm. I mean, I remember even on our board, people were asking, is Raiola a better overall prospect than Manning? And that was obviously before today when people are salty that Manning went to Texas. So he's a huge prospect out of Arizona. He loves Georgia. He's been to Georgia a bunch of times. It kind of seemed like Georgia was really starting to trend for him, obviously pending Manning's decision. And then he went on a visit to Ohio State. Ohio State started trending. He committed to Ohio State last month. But that's one of those things where Georgia will surely work to flip him. It's still far enough out for that. And I think step one in that is maybe getting him back on campus for a game this fall. And then you kind of go from there and keep maintaining those relationships, saying, hey, we're still here. You loved it here. Start emphasizing all those things they were emphasizing to Arch.
You mentioned Julian Sayin and the fact that he's been looking at Georgia. He's also been looking at Texas. Now Arch goes to Texas, so it seems like Georgia could say, hey, and Julian Sayin, 6'1", 180-pound quarterback out of Carlsbad, California, number 4 in the nation, 5-star. So maybe you don't get the number 1 guy in the nation, you get the number 4 guy next year. Horrible. But that is a guy. So you can take Texas off the list because I doubt they would go back-to-back Arch Manning, Julian Sayin. He's also looking at Michigan and Notre Dame. I like Georgia's chances against recruiting quarterbacks against either of those two schools.
Well, and the thing is, Notre Dame, like I was saying a minute ago, Notre Dame got C.J. Carr in the 24 class, the grandson of Lloyd Carr, who he's a 4-star, probably top 6 or 7 quarterback in the country. So you wouldn't think they'd take another quarterback in the class. So, I mean, granted, there's still a ton of time in this recruitment. Things can change, whatever. But of that 4 that that he mentioned to me when I spoke with him a couple months ago, it's really Georgia and Michigan that haven't taken quarterbacks in the 24 class. I'd expect Georgia to see Georgia, really turn up the heat on Julian Sayin as well.
Yeah, I can see come visit Georgia for a fall game and then go visit Michigan for one of those late games. Yeah, when they play Ohio State in the cold, that'll be fun. To me, also the number 5 player in the nation for next year, right behind Julian Sayin, is Jaden Davis. Now, this is a kid out of Charlotte, North Carolina. You said originally he's from Georgia, another pro-style quarterback. I've heard so much about Jaden Davis. The first comment on the vault when it was mentioned that Arch went to Texas was all in on Jaden Davis now.
Yeah, and like you said, he's a guy from Georgia. He's a guy that, because me and Blaine and I saw him at the Charlotte Rivals game, but he's a guy that you're kind of looking, which one's Jaden Davis, who's Jaden Davis. Then he walks in and it's like, oh, that's Jaden Davis. Very impressive looking kid, really smooth throwing motion, looks good. And he's a guy that, being in Charlotte now, North Carolina down in Mark Clemson, he really likes Georgia. He's been in Georgia a bunch. I believe he was there this spring. I'm not 100% positive. I'm pretty sure. And I remember, Roddy, you talked to him somewhere last summer, and you sent me the audio because I was just a new guy at the time, and you had me do your grunt work. And in that interview, he said, yeah, Georgia has told me I'm the top quarterback on their board in 24. So that was over about a year ago now. So he's a guy that Georgia obviously really likes. Todd Monken's built a good relationship with him, and he's a guy, we mentioned Raiola. Raiola's committed to Ohio State, obviously, so that might be a little harder work to flip him. But you got Davis and you've got Sayin, neither of which are committed, and both of which Georgia could go all in on and say, hey, where else would you rather be than right here in Athens?
Yeah, number 4 and number 5 quarterbacks in the nation for 2024, both 5-star guys. Not too bad. Another guy that was a little interesting to me is a kid out of Willis, Texas, DJ Lagwade, number 26 in the nation, 4-star guy. And everybody else we've been talking about are these pro-style. I show says pro-style quarterback, pro-style quarterback. I'm just highlighting them for the folks watching at home or watching at work. Hey, if you're at work, be sure to have that exit screen up. I don't want you guys get in trouble. But he's a dual threat quarterback. And I know that what Georgia runs, they like to run a quarterback in the pocket, but at the same time, Todd Monken has had great success with dual threat quarterbacks and guys who that threat to run. That was the big reason why Stetson Bennett kind of kept that starting job over JT Daniels, because JT Daniels couldn't move that well. And Stetson Bennett could take off and run. How many games where things kind of broke down on the offense and Stetson took off and ran is one of his better features. So tell me a little bit about DJ Lagwade out of Willis, Texas. Can you hear me there, Jed?
Can you hear me, Roddy?
Yeah, I was asking you to tell me a little bit about DJ
there
Lagwade.
We go. I got you now. Lagwade, obviously being in Texas, I haven't seen him play. I think, he's listed as a dual threat guy. I think he's more in the mold of a, Tim Tebow's not a great example, but I think he's closer to a Tim Tebow as opposed to a Lamar Jackson, just in the sense that, I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to run for like 250 yards a game, constantly pull the ball and read options. I think he's closer to a true pocket passer, but he also can kill you with his feet if given the chance. Georgia likes him a lot. Todd Monken has been to a school, I believe, twice. The last time Monken went out there, he watched his whole practice. He saw him throw. He liked his release. He liked his ball placement, that kind of stuff. It's very interesting that Georgia's really kind of going, I wouldn't say all in, but they're going hard after a dual threat guy, because like you said, that's not really. I mean, who was the last Georgia quarterback you classify as a dual threat? Like, I mean, DJ Shockley's another guy. Like, he was a pocket passer that could kill you with his feet, but he wanted to sit in the pocket and throw. So,
that's what Stetson Bennett is.
Yeah, exactly. The guy. That's kind of what I think Lagwade is. And granted, like, I haven't watched a ton of his film, but I think that's more what Lagwade skews towards, is a guy who wants to sit in the pocket and throw, but if he needs to, or if you call, a design quarterback sweep or whatever, he can kill you with his legs too.
It almost feels like we used to have, we classify guys as a quarterback. We didn't have pro style or dual threat. We just had quarterback. And then if there was a guy like was it Nick Williams? I'm trying to remember one of the guys who played quarterback for his high school, came to Georgia as a defensive back. I think went to Auburn as a quarterback. But the idea was, here's a guy who can play quarterback, but his strongest feature is his legs. I think I'd like us to go back to quarterbacks and athletes, and the quarterbacks, if there's a guy who you just add on, hey, he can also make plays with his legs. Because, I just think sometimes people, they get the idea of dual threat, and they're like, well, he's going to throw for 200 yards and run for 150. I'm like, no, he may only run for 17 yards, but it may be over 4 carries, and 3 of those might go for first downs, and he kept the chains moving, then threw for 350 yards. So to me, that is a dual threat guy, because, one end didn't have contained, or you can't come crashing in because you always have just the threat of the run, and it keeps the defense honest. So that's just kind of my way. All right.
I think I like that description, because like a dual threat guy, dual threat means you got to account for both. Like, that's where Stetson Bennett kills you, is when the one carry a game, when you don't account for him on his own read, he pulls it and he runs for 20 yards. And that's not a huge number, but the one carry he does it is hugely critical, in the course of a game.
Right, that's why. But to me, that's a quarterback who can run. Right. It means not a dual threat, because to me, a dual threat is a guy on every snap you're thinking he might take off. That's
right.
Cam Newton was the dual threat guy in my head. It's like, shit, what are we gonna do? So that's just anyway. That's my take on it. All right, folks. I thought we'd jump on here for 10 minutes. It's been half an hour, and I know Jed's driving. He's probably going to crash any second. But if he does, he's fired, because he has the barbecue in the car that he's bringing me from Stamey's out of North Carolina. Stay tuned to UGA Sports for a Jamal Jarrett update. You want to give the folks a teaser?
Yeah, spoke with Jamal at his high school.
Who's Jamal Jarrett?
Jamal Jarrett, he's a number 50 player in the country. He's the number 2 defensive tackle, I think. Georgia's been in on him really hard. That's probably the guy that you guys have heard compared to Jaden Davis. He's big, and he's from North Carolina. That's really all you need to know. Georgia actually brought Jaden Davis in 2 weekends ago for Jamal's officials to kind of tell him, hey, you want to be great as a defensive lineman? Georgia's the place to come and get developed. He has a top 3 of Georgia, North Carolina, and Auburn. I think the battle is mainly between Georgia and North Carolina. Personally, I think Georgia's in a really good spot of landing him. He's set to commit on July 19th. So just went and talked to him and got an update, which, by the way, side note, Grimsley High School up there in Greensboro, North Carolina, also the home of 22 five-star Travis Shaw, is beautiful. That place is beautiful. The main building is like 100 years old. It's really cool on the inside. That doesn't have anything to do with anything, but man, it was so beautiful on the inside. But yeah, just talked to him, got an idea of where he is, and got a video interview with him that will either be posting on YouTube or patching into Rumors versus Facts or something like that. I spoke to Jamal's coach as well for a little coach's corner type thing. So plenty of Jamal Jared coverage coming your way, although I know that's not what anybody's interested in this second. But kind of like we were talking about this whole show, Roddy Manning is committed. Arch Manning is committed to Texas. This 23 class is not slowing down, right? Georgia's got plenty of other targets they're in on. Another big weekend of official visitors coming in this weekend. So stay tuned to UGA Sports and the great guys on our recruiting team, Blaine, Ben, Trent, Paul, sometimes when he gets motivated, which is rare. Not Paul, yeah. And yeah, I mean, we're gonna have you covered on every corner of this 23 class, with or without Arch Manning. So
fantastic. All right, thanks for tuning in, and everybody, thank you for watching. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Take care.